Thank you very much. I appreciate this, and I appreciate your help in getting this all running. Um, by what I've seen, I suspect most of you know what tissue stereos are, but just in case there's someone out there who doesn't, let me give a really quick overview. So if you could show the next slide. Um, 19th century photography was mostly on albumen paper, which was incredibly thin. It curled, it was very fragile. And because of that, they would place it on cardstock. But the French decided to take advantage of these potential flaws, and they came up with a format that we call a French tissue. And what they did is they cut windows out of one card, they put the albumin photograph behind it, and then they did a little magic, which I'll show you in a minute, and they covered the back with tissue and made a sandwich. If you do next, so you rip apart a tissue, and on the back you can see they tinted it as we've noted. They made little pinpricks that light could shine through. They put gel, they scratched it. And the impact of this was that when you backlit them, the scenes really came alive. But they didn't want you to see this. So next slide. There you go. They covered the back with a tissue so you couldn't see the magic that was going to happen. I'm going to leave it on this slide for a minute to give you a little bit of background. In the late 1850s, there was an intersection of about four circumstances that made it possible and inspirational for them to create Diableries. The first was the technical ability to do this. The second was the excesses of a wild life in Paris. It was bad. The church was not happy, and things were going kind of crazy. The third thing is one of the elements that the church had used was Diableries. These were long known before this period, but they were in the form of artwork or stories and what have you. But with all the wildlife in Paris, the devil became a very popular subject. He was in plays and artwork and what have you. And the fourth factor, which was really the major factor, was Napoleon II. In 1848, he was elected president of France. And when he came up for election in 1851, he couldn't run because the Constitution didn't allow it. So he made a military coup and he declared himself the Emperor of France. And many people didn't like what had happened, and he remained as Emperor of France until 1870. So four people were the most important in creating these Diableries. Two were sculptors, a man by the name of Hennetier and a man by the name of Hebert, and they were joined with two publishers, one Lemiche and one by the name of Bloch. Now, Lemiche had a particular dislike of Napoleon because he absolutely hated how he took over the government. So there was this distrust and problems at the time. One of the things that Napoleon brought back that really bothered people was the censorship of everything. There was no freedom of the press, no freedom of speech. And so they really felt compelled to make the statements any way they could. Next slide, please. One of the first things that they did was easy to get past the censors. This was life in hell. This is purely religious. If you're bad, you're going to go to hell. This is the devil's cauldron. And you can see flames here. I hope you can see my cursor here. Flames, the devil's eyes glow. It's quite a composition. And if you're unsure of what happens if you do bad things, this is what's going to happen. Next. Then we get to the Last Judgment, and the souls are being carried, and the final decision is being made. Are you going to go to heaven with St. Peter, or are you going to be cast down in hell? Now, I'd like you to pay attention in this view to the musculature on this figure here and the veils or shrouds of these people going up to heaven. We have to remember that these clay figures were only 6 to 8 inches tall. And the fact that they could get that much detail in these beautiful figures is absolutely amazing. Down at the bottom left, you can see this sculpture was created by Hebert, and he signed it and dated it 1860. Some of them are signed, some of them aren't. Okay, next. This is the resurrection, the same theme. When this is backlit with a really good copy, it's absolutely stunning. But you can see souls are coming up from the grave. Uh, Here, let me try again. Can you see my cursor now? The
No,
different
unfortunately,
gravestones. No,
Paula, this
okay.
is not possible. You have to tell where in the image.
Okay, that's fine. In the lower right, there is a little sign that says um, she was nice. And, but I want to call your attention to the far figures on the lower left. Here's a couple that are reunited after being dead, but that tombstone has got Henetier's name on it. And he was the sculptor who made this view. And the column behind it, it's a broken column, looks very much like the column on his family's gravestone. Okay, now, like I said, Bloch and Hennetier, Hebert and Hennetier wanted to make comments about Napoleon and the situation in France at the time, but they knew they couldn't get them past the censors. So I'm going to show you some views where they were making comments, but keep in the back of your mind that when they were taken to the censors, they didn't take one at a time. They gave them a whole stack of 20 some cards. So they put the religious cards on the top, then they got progressively worse, and then the religious cards on the bottom. We know this because of the copyright register, the order in which they're entered. And obviously, the censors said, oh, okay, it's religious, just let them. So they got away with it. So now you can see some of the comments that they were making through their stereos. Next. Okay, this is the Devil's Chateau. Now, in the background, you can see a castle, and we're pretty certain that this is one of Napoleon's castles that has since been destroyed. So we're not 100% certain, but we're reasonably certain. Now, Satan, and from here on, Satan and Napoleon become one and the same. So when you see Satan, think Napoleon. Here, he's surrounded by a bevy of beautiful women. They're being kind to him and saying nice things. And if you look at each of the figures, they are beautifully modeled, and they are individual people. These were not made from separate molds. And my suspicion is that these are particular women. Uh, Napoleon was such a womanizer, dealing with having affairs with countesses and all these famous people. And people at the time may well have known who they were being referred to. Now, one of our problems is that they there was gossip, there was common knowledge. People could see what was going on. They couldn't write about it. But at the time, subtle clues could be interpreted in the claymation and in the photographs. But over 150, 160 years, much of that information is lost because it wasn't written down. So we don't know. Sometimes we can only guess. Sometimes it's obvious. The next slide, however, is obvious. This was made in 1859, copyrighted in 1860. It's The Marriage of the Devil, and it refers to two marriages. The first is Napoleon's own marriage in 1853. And at the time, he was 18 years older than his bride, Eugenie, who was a loose a woman. The people called her a tart, and they didn't like her at all. But more likely, this also refers to Napoleon's nephew, who was married earlier in the year this was made. He was age 37, and his bride was the 16-year-old daughter of the King of Sardinia. And the common phrase about this marriage was that it was an elephant marrying a gazelle. Now you can see that they are condemning this marriage. The officiant is certainly not a normal priest. He's a monster who has been almost exactly copied from another piece of artwork that was circulating. And behind him, we have Cupid who's thumbing his nose at the couple. So they're making pretty strong statements about what they think of Napoleon and his wife. Okay, next, please. Okay, this is the review of the Infernal Guard, aka the Imperial Guard. And Napoleon would send his troops in when there were things he didn't like. Um, he sent the troops into Lamiche's house. Lamiche was the publisher. And they searched his house and they found that, well, he had negatives of naked women and salacious things, but they also found a negative for a view called the Review of the Infernal Guard. So it was probably this one. Now, this time, the guard let him off without any consequences. But within 4 weeks, he was back in court, probably from taking more nude photographs, and he was sentenced to 4 months in prison, which it was a harsh prison. And I will say that it was the first of many times he would be in prison. So he had quite a hatred for Napoleon. Now, I will also point out photographically, if you see how fuzzy the figure on the horse is and the figure behind the figures on the right, that is because of the green dye that was used. And it's a very acidic dye, and you tend to get these stains. So that wasn't original. That's what's happened with age. And of course, now we know that there was probably arsenic in it. So even to this day, they're affecting us. Okay, next, please. Okay, Satan has to continually get souls into hell. And one of the way he does it is with the Grand Carnival, when people would dress up in costumes and party till all hours and drink a lot. You can see that there are two figures in the front that are already passed out and probably dead. There's a man who is wearing a crown seated, and a skeleton has come out and tapping him on the shoulder like, it's your time. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. But the figures of most importance, and this again attests to how subtle they were sometimes in making their references to what was going on. The devil who is by the column is pouring champagne into the glass of this couple. Now, the man is wearing a battered old hat, which was a kind of symbol of a famous actor at the time. However, if you blow the view up, you will realize that that is not the actor who was clean shaven. This figure has a goatee beard and mustache, and it's Napoleon. So they are hoping that the devil gets Napoleon. Uh, okay, next, please. Now they're getting bolder with their comments about what is happening. This is Satan the journalist. He's two-faced. Truth, poor Truth, is been put in jail. At the top, you see people, probably news writers who have written the wrong thing, and they're being tortured until they make some kind of redaction. In the front on the right, if you look below the skeleton wearing a cap, which, by the way, is a chef's cap, you can faintly see a pair of scissors. Um, Obviously, they were going in and cutting out anything that they could. Two papers to the left under the figure with the baton, and to the right of the devil, you see a long white rectangle. When you blow that up, it says Chronique, which was a satirical column that made comments on the news, kind of like our late night TV hosts are doing. The signs on the left, blag is lies. Uh, Serpent de mer is newspeak for unresolved issues. And the one I like right below that is Canard Nouveau. Forgive my pronunciation, it's American. Uh, and that means fake news. And we all know where that goes. Okay, if you would go to the next slide, please. Now, all the views that we had been looking at, the religious views, and many of these that were making light comments on life in France at the time and Napoleon's goings on, um, they're okay. But in 1870, life changed for everyone. The Franco-Prussian War started. Napoleon was forced into it. He was defeated. He was dethroned as emperor. And that was at most of 1870. Then the siege of Paris from September of 1870 to January of 1871. And then the French Commune for the next couple of months until May. And during that time, buildings were burned, barricades were set up, keeping people in, keeping people out. People were starving. They were eating rats and horses, anything they could. It was a really terrible time. And the Franco-Prussian War was, um, I wouldn't want to say commemorated, but certainly noted at the beginning of it in this view. And this one is by Hebert, and it wasn't made until after the Franco-Prussian War was over. As far as I know, no views were made during that horrible period. But this is a beautiful composition. The cannon on the left and the partial figures on the right suggest that the devil, who is sitting in the front laughing, has a much bigger army that he is sending up above to deal with the battle, total destruction. The next slide, which I don't change it. Well, yeah, that's okay. The next slide that I did not include shows them returning with a sign that says 200,000 souls. The estimate was that there were at least 200,000 casualties on both sides. So the devil doesn't care where the souls are coming from. He's taking them. Now in the next slide. But everyone that survived was truly happy to be alive. And Hebert, who was making many of these claymations, he started another series, which was of the life of Christ. And they are truly beautiful, beautiful views. He was very happy and possibly a little sorry that he had done these views. But nonetheless, life is good now, and now the views of hell, the visions of hell, are happy, fun times. This is we've survived, and here we have a concert. Now, it can't be a very good concert. It has to be horribly noisy and loud. You have the poor skeleton in the middle in the back, one of the judges of what's going on, and he's holding his ears. He can't stand what's going on, and the other skeletons are like screaming, "Please stop." Now, at this time, Berlioz was performing concerts with live cannons, so they were certainly loud. And he was complaining about Wagner's operas and music, that the music was torture to the ears. And at part of this scene, you can see a hurdy-gurdy organ that one skeleton is turning. And they were popular out on the streets in Paris. And people used to pay them to stop playing. Now, what the moon means, I don't know. On the right-hand half, you can see that this is a horribly damaged view. And given the fragile nature of these tissues, it's amazing that any of them have survived this length of time. Okay, one of the other things you can do in hell, next slide, please, you can have your photograph taken. And there is Satan or Napoleon having his photograph taken. And Napoleon actually did make great use of photography. He had his portrait made all the time and circulated. He wanted to be remembered by the people in the way he wanted to be remembered. But in this view, we have a little bit more. The sign at the top reads, "Open day and night." Well, you're in hell. You know, it doesn't matter what time it is. Right beneath the arch on the left are two semi-naked women, and these look very specialized. Is there an incident that's going on we don't know about? A story we don't know. Excuse me. As for the camera, why is the lens pointing up? Or is it just a button? Now, under the arch on the right, oh gosh, I'm losing my voice. Under the arch on the right, there is a sign for a man by the name of Lemoyne, and he provided paper products for photographers. So this is kind of product placement. Okay, next, please. Another thing you can do is go to the theater. And this is Orpheus in the underworld. At the same time that Hebert was making the Diableries and the Life of Christ, both him and Henetier were making beautiful claymation dioramas of popular plays in Paris at the time. So they were making tons and tons of figures. And one of the things I want to point out here is, even though they were doing that, look at the costumes. Each one is different. The seamstresses in the back supporting this must have been amazing seamstresses to make these costumes. Again, remember, they're only 6 to 8 inches tall, and each one is different. Okay, next, please. This is a highlight in hell. The sun has decided to come and visit. Now, we know that, excuse me, This is a representation of Louis XIV, the Sun King, and he's descending into hell with his orange skin and gold body, carrying an umbrella. Why an umbrella? I don't know, but he was depicted that way, and he's coming to visit Satan. And if you look at Satan, he is not looking very well at all. This is one of the worst looking Satans. And indeed, this view was made in 1873, and that's the year that Napoleon died. So obviously he's getting sick. The woman behind him, his wife, has gotten portly, but now the king looks like Shrek. I like it. Now I mentioned that of all the hundreds and hundreds of clay figures that they made, we see very little duplication, and they were very fragile. Sometimes you can find that parts have broken off, but it's rare that you see them reused until this period. And my view is that they had to create so many scenes that they started to reuse them. So if you look at the orchestra, just keep them in mind. And to the bottom right, if you look at the bulldog soldier, you'll see him too. Now, during the siege of Paris, Hebert, who made this view, he was in the military, and we have a portrait of him, and he looks very much like he's wearing the same uniform. So maybe it was him, maybe not. Okay, next, please. Well, one of the many fun things you can do as hell is to have a regatta. I, what do you think? Not bad. Here, Satan is in the boat on the right, and we counted 22, maybe 23 little skeletons. And on the upper left, you can see there's your band. They've been reused. And if you look at the bridge, that bridge, we'll see that again. But my particular favorite in this is the little skeleton that is between the boats and the band. This isn't the best angle of it, but we got to name him Happy. He just has a great joy in, well, I can't say life, but a great joy in whatever he has. And he's always just posed like this. And it's called Spot the Skeleton. Okay, one thing, well, yeah, next, here we go. You can go to the library. There's the bulldog soldier again. And here, Satan is reading the skulls, trying to decide which ones are the deadly sins they've committed and where to file them. And there are only 4 of the sins that are available that we can see. We have sloth and greed, and then we have pride and gluttony. And on gluttony, the second shelf down, the one skeleton wearing a hat is a chef's cap. So I guess if you're a chef, you have to be a glutton. But one of the one things you would never expect in hell, next slide, is someone who doesn't know how to delete a PowerPoint slide, but this is what hell looks like when they turn the lights out. Okay, next slide, please. There you go. You wouldn't expect ice skating, but here you go. Hell has frozen over. That's Napoleon in the guise of Satan in his jacket and Eugenie. Now, he liked ice skate, and we think he probably did most skating when he was in Switzerland. But here you can see this scene reused the regatta set. So there's the bridge. The band has gone, but there's Happy in the lower right front. He's skating, he's falling down. Life is great. He loves it. The skeleton female figure on the left, she's selling brioche and drinks. And it's a happy time for almost everyone except the group on the upper left that is being poked and uh, not allowed to join the party. The next slide is a scene you would expect to find firefighters. And this is Les Pompiers d'Enfer. And at the time, there was a very popular song called Les Pompiers d'Enfer. And they would have instantly made the connection between the two. Now, this scene, there's the poor commander who is in the middle, and he's trying to get his groups to do his bidding, but they're more like the Keystone Cops. They're not doing much of anything. Give me just a minute here. There we go. The figure in the upper right, he's pumping water. He's just fine. The skeleton that has the hose, he's aiming the water kind of at the fire, but more likely at the devil who's up there. In the lower left, partially covered by the red for the flames, there's a skeleton. He's drinking. He couldn't care less about the fire. The skeleton that is going back to the fountain, the pump, to refill his bucket and his syringe, the two skeletons, they're playing seesaw on it. They're not really pumping water. To the far right, one skeleton is kissing a maiden. His attentions have turned. And one of my favorite is the figure right behind them who's carrying a rifle. I mean, there's nothing like taking a rifle to a fire to put it out. I don't know. Okay, next, please. The last slide of the basic 72 set series of Diableries is the theater. It's a wonderful thing. They did it all the time. It was a wonderful way to divert your attention, and certainly you therefore had to have Satan's as the theater. And I'm ending on this slide because these Diableries inspired many other Diableries. These ran through the 1870s, but up to 1890, they continued to produce these. And there was a big telescope at the 1890 fair, was one stereo that was made called The Moon at 1 meter. Because when you look through the telescope, the moon looked like it was right there. Now, you may remember that Méliès, the filmmaker, he did at the same time the film and of going to the moon with the devil and the skeletons. But the impact of these views have gone up to today. My husband Ed and I wanted to understand more, and so we created our own Diablerie based on this one. Next, please. And we created Queen on fair. It seemed only fair. And we learned quite a lot. But one of the things that we learned also was that after the Diableries and the dioramas have been made, the skeletons get a life of their own. Next, please. And they have an after party after you go to bed. So that's pretty much it. In summary, Ed is now making new Diableries based on current events. And the only thing I can think of is Shakespeare's quote from The Tempest of "What's past is present." So I hope you enjoyed this little snippet and that you can see some Diableries on your own. Thank you very much. And here are some links if you want to see all of the Diableries or order a book, or if you're interested, you can see more tissues, including surprises. which I didn't talk about. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to see what I can do to answer.